Television is full of celebrity chefs these days, but one of the true originals is Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet. He created a persona and had a flair in the kitchen that was the gold standard all future television chefs tried to live up to. He continues to write and cook, and he will be our special guest. Plus, today we feature our own honey in a honey and beer braised rabbit with white bean cassoulet. My taste buds are already buzzing. I'm Garret Schack, and that's what we're cooking on the coast. Welcome to Cookin' on the Coast. Today we're sourcing some local honey to create a local honey and beer braised rabbit with a white bean cassoulet. You're going to love it. Now let's get right to it. We have a gorgeous little rabbit here. They're amazingly high in protein and a very lean meat. So we need to use a slightly slower cooking method. In today's application, we're going to do a braise. Braising includes two different types of heat. It includes the moist heat cooking and dry heat cooking. First thing we're going to do is separate the hind leg here from the hip joint. We're going to take the forelegs off. Now there's a really luxurious piece of meat in here, and it's called the saddle. This is sort of the tenderloin of the rabbit, and on the back as well is another muscle that runs along. But what we need to do is get at it. So big fancy cleaver here, and we just give it a nice hard chop right through. Okay. And then on the other side, what I like to do is remove the sort of the belly here. It's almost like the bacon from a pig, but not enough fat to worry about using it for that. So I take that back, and then we're going to do another chop with that cleaver again, right here. Don't be shy. You want to kind of get right through to the cutting board. Just like that. There we are. So these two pieces you can set aside. You could braise those off as well, or you could use them to make a rabbit stock. Either would work really well. And this is quite a large portion, so we're going to give this a chop probably into, well, let's chop it into 3 pieces here. So one through, and again. So now we've got all our pieces. 2 hind legs, 2 forelegs, and our 3 saddle pieces. We're going to start the braising process. Got some vegetable oil into a hot pan here. There we are. You can see the oil dancing in there. That's exactly what we want. Give it a good seasoning. Some nice salt and sea salt here. Fresh cracked pepper. There we are, and into the pan. Seasoning side down. Nice big pot here, as you can see, so that we can really get some caramelization on all sides. I'm going to season the other side here now a little bit more. And now we'll chop some of our mirepoix that's going to add flavor into this dish. So we have some carrots and rabbit. Who would have thought, hey? It's okay to do it right on that same cutting board you had the rabbit on. This is all going to go into the pot and get cooked down, so there's no worries. Some carrots, some fairly big chunks. This is going to cook for probably 2 to 3 hours on a nice slow heat. Celery, some onion, and we have some leeks as well. So as we're doing this here, that rabbit's developing a bit of a crust around it. So it's going to protect that skin and also add a really nice layer of flavor. And then we have a gorgeous leek here. Farm fresh if you can find it. They're amazing. Lovely green. This green here, don't throw it away. Save that. We'll use that for a stock a little bit later. And then we're just going to give this a nice chop sort of in a quarter here. We'll leave it fairly well put together. So because this is going to cook for such a long time, you don't have to break it all the way down, and let's just let it sort of come together like that. Okay, a couple of the key ingredients to this portion of the dish. Honey. We actually raise it on the roof at our hotel, which is really cool. We have about 6 or 7 hives up there that produce anywhere to up to 90 kilos of honey each hive. So that's really amazing. And it's also known as a natural way, if you're using natural honey, unpasteurized stuff, to help fight allergies and such. So again, only the pure, unprocessed raw honey will provide those optimal health benefits. Let's have a look at what's going on. Hopefully you can see that there. We've got some caramelization happening on the bottom of the pan. See that right there? It's exactly what we want. Flip these pieces over. Look, looks amazing. Nice color, starting to smell the sweetness of that honey is really going to lend nicely to this rabbit. Rabbit's very similar to chicken in the sense that it's kind of a plain palate, if you will, so it's going to absorb any of the flavors that you have in there. And then we're going to use sort of a traditional type lager. You don't want anything too strong, definitely don't want anything too hoppy, as the rabbit might get out of the pot. We're just going to fire the beer in there. Now, as a rule of thumb, you want to use almost all the beer, but always save yourself a little for the chef, right? Yeah, it just has to be done. We've used the beer to sort of deglaze this pan and get things going. We don't want to cover it all the way, but I do want to put just a little bit more liquid in there. So I've got just a nice sort of roasted chicken stock here. It'll lend nicely to the beer. And this chicken stock we'll use as well in our cassoulet. Now, before we throw this in the oven, add a few fresh herbs. It's okay if we leave the stems and everything on. And I have some really nice fresh bay leaves. In they go. Okay, at this point, we'll find our lid, pop it on top, and take that over to the oven. Fairly slow heat. You want about 350 at tops if you want to kind of expedite things, but otherwise look for, say, 300 degrees would be fine. Let's move some of this stuff down below and we'll get started on our cassoulet. Now we're using a really good quality Paderno pan. We want to make sure it has a nice heavy bottom because this is going to cook low and slow, and then we're going to fire this in the oven as well to bring it all together. A little bit of oil. And then we'll go back to our classic flavoring ingredients, or sort of it's kind of like the mother sauce or the mother flavors of all of our dishes. We have onions, and then carrots and celery. So the fancy French word for that is mirepoix. Now a cassoulet is sort of like a casserole. I guess we've deemed it as a casserole, but in France, it's commonly done in a multitude of different ways, in the sense that you could have it as a sort of a poor man's stew, all the way up to sort of the fanciest of dishes where they use duck confit and goose fat and so on. In this case, we have our mirepoix in there. We've got some ham here, nice smoked ham, all diced up. I have a piece of local salami. It's a lovely end cut that, might have just sat in the fridge for ages. Let's get it into our pot here. Just cut it up a little bit so it's a little bit more manageable. There we go. That into our pot. Nice. Okay, turn my heat down just a little bit and continue on with the cooking process. I have some fennel seeds. Fennel is another sort of one of my favorite things that I like to add to cassoulets. Sort of adds a licoricey type flavor, so a bit of sweetness. It's one of my favorites for a cassoulet, that's for sure. And garlic, of course. So chop up some garlic. We'll keep it nice and rustic here, just some big slices, some big chunks. That's quite all right. Here we go. So now we've got our mirepoix, we've got our smoky ham, we've got this wonderful salami that we've added in there. All the meats and vegetables are coming together. To tie it in with our dish, with our rabbit that's braising away, we're going to add some fresh bay leaf, some thyme, a little white wine. You can already smell that fennel. The fennel went in nice and early before we added the liquid, so it has a chance to toast and sort of release all its essential flavors. We'll toss in a little bit of tomato, or a lot of tomato if you will. Finish it off with some chicken stock. Okay, we're gonna let that come up to a simmer. We'll be back later in the show to finish off our honey and beer braised rabbit with white bean cassoulet. But first, right after the break, stick around for our special guest, the Galloping Gourmet, Kerr. Welcome back to Cooking on the Coast. Few people have been fortunate to have as distinguished a cooking career as our guest today. Hosting over 18,000 programs, authoring over 25 books, I'm delighted to have one of my culinary heroes, the one and only Galloping Gourmet, Kerr. Graham, Such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
I'm delighted to be here. This is wonderful.
This is a very exciting opportunity for me, obviously, and for our viewers as well. So how are you doing?
Hi, guys. I'm doing fine, yes. I don't think I would like to leap over a dining room chair just at the moment, but I used to do that holding a glass of wine, and people would always say, how is it that the wine didn't go everywhere? And the answer was saran wrap.
Oh, really? Yes, so there was actually a trick to it, hey?
I could jump over the chair, and the glass of wine now, not the chair.
Not the chair.
But otherwise, I'm doing fine.
I'm just amazed at the length of your career and how many things you've accomplished in that time, and the fact that it's not slowing down. You know, you're still going.
No, it really isn't. I've likened my life to that of a Chinook salmon. I should have been more rational and been a coho or something, or silver. But the Chinook has about 8 years of life, and I've had nearly 80 years. It's my next birthday. And what I find myself doing is going upstream at the moment against a torrent which is coming the other way. And the torrent is what I would call marketing malnutrition. And it's not that people actually want to make people sick. It's just that people want to eat on the run.
That's right. It's the demand today, right?
That's the kind of food which is great. And it tastes wonderful. But I've come up with the idea of to nourish and delight in that order. I seek to be nourished, and then I want to be delighted.
Absolutely.
Not delighted and then, well, maybe.
That's right. Well, and that is the challenge today.
Yes.
As we mentioned, it's difficult in today's day and age when you're raising a family and everything's so busy. You're at sporting events every day of the week and so on. But we've forgotten that the convenience doesn't mean healthful.
That's it. And you know, if you take the salmon still as the idea, this salmon, when it's going upstream, it doesn't do it constantly.
Right.
It pulls off to one side, has a deep pool, and we need to know in our culture where the deep pools are. And I think cooking a meal for one's family, sitting around together and nourishing each other, not just with the food, but with the caring and the love that we have for them, it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And that's where I get my strength from then being able to, flash off and do whatever
I'm welling up here. It's so true. You know, we really do. And that time that we get to spend sitting around the dinner table or in the kitchen, just the other day I was cooking with my daughter, and she was just mucking about, and she ended up making some naan bread, a sweet cinnamon naan bread that we cooked up and we had as dessert. You know,
how old is she?
She's 8 years old.
Oh.
And it was just innocent in the kitchen with Dad, kind of working away as I was cooking dinner. And it's those times that are so precious and so valuable. So those deep pools that we need to, as a society, I think, and we need folks like yourself and hopefully myself too, to lead these Chinook into those deep pools if we can keep going on that path.
There's a whole bunch of fish at the sea that say, when the salmon passes them going upstream, say, where are you going? And said, I'm going up. So why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You know, we have our eggs at sea, no problem. The herring do that all the time. I think it needs to become a real grassroots thing. And we realize that if we can't cook too well, if you start with something which is absolutely fresh and you put it together with something else that is fresh, you've got a very good chance of working.
That's right. It's going to be something that's healthful and delicious, right? So, like you said, delighting with our cuisine, delighting with the food, right?
I am passionately trying by 2020 to make a difference in British Columbia and Washington State and Oregon State. I don't want to go over the mountain range. I want to stay on the west side. And I want to Zone 8, it's a growing Zone 8, to become famous throughout the world by 2020 for our local cuisine.
Well, I think we're on the right track.
I think we're doing really a great job.
And I know one of your books ties into just that. I think people can also look at growing their own food.
Yes.
And using our backyards effectively, you know, maybe taking out that little patch of grass and actually planting some food. And in your book here, I had the chance to peruse it. You give some great examples of what works well, how to grow certain vegetables and when the climate is best and so on. Yep. But I think that's another step in the right direction. So those folks that say, oh, well, I can't afford to...
I'm really looking for community in doing that. I'm looking for people. I was just in South Surrey the other day at White Rock to the garden club and challenging them to use their expertise to get out in the community, cause a community garden to come up, and make sure that people from the food bank come there, people from schools, children from schools, and funny enough, people from churches. Right. Who have a good heart for the community but have no means to get their hand in the dirt and do something about it. This is a crab cake.
I guess we got to keep things. I have a feeling you and I could do an entire show through conversation.
We've got to eat something.
Absolutely. So we need to nourish ourselves.
You have a go at that one.
Alrighty.
The idea behind this one is to have a crab cake, local ingredients completely, but in addition to that, the flavor of the Pacific Rim. There's wasabi, the green, hot mustard, and there is the miso.
Miso in the dressing.
The miso's in the dressing with the arugula.
It still tastes gorgeous and fresh, doesn't it? Mm. It's very nice.
You did a good job with that.
Sam did an excellent job, didn't she? She really did. Yes. Graham, I think this is one of these recipes that you've come up with for special events, because I know that you're still out on the scene. And again, I hope that one day when I get to be your age, that I'm still out there and still doing the thing that I love.
You're looking in good shape.
Thank you very much, Graham. Real pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we'll continue our conversation once I turn off the cameras.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Stay tuned, and we'll be finishing up our rabbit recipe when we come back. That's fantastic, Graham. And this crab cake is delicious. And we're back. What a true inspiration to us all, Graham Kerr. Now we've pulled our rabbit out of the oven. It's been in there through the magic television for about 2 or 3 hours and is ready to go, 2.5 to 3 hours. We need to strain off our white beans, which we've pre-cooked already. You could use a canned variety in this case, but I like to do them myself. So we're just gonna drain this off in the sink here. Okay, now let's have a look at our cassoulet. Look at that. Simmering away nicely, just a really low simmer. That's what we want. We want all those flavors to get a chance to kind of all come together and incorporate. The vegetables to soften, the meat to let out some of its flavor. It's really incredible. We're going to add our beans. Now you're probably wondering, why didn't you just put the beans in there to begin with? Well, typically 2 reasons. One, we used a smoked ham. Ham is usually cured, and it will have a bit of salt in it. And we've also used a tinned tomato. Those tinned tomatoes are usually packed in salt as well. Salt impedes the cooking of the bean. It actually hardens the shell as you put it in there. So you don't want to do that. So I always cook them separately. There we go. So if you're ever wondering why your beans are still crunchy and it seems like they've been cooking forever, that's exactly why. There's somehow salt has gotten in there. Keep that simmering going, and it looks great. So let's start with our plate here. We're going to put a little bit of this cassoulet right in the center of our plate. There we go. Now I'm using a slotted spoon here, and that's for a reason. I don't want to take all of that juice out. We want to leave some of that behind. Otherwise, this will become a soup rather than a cassoulet. There we are. All right, and now the rabbit. Look at that. You can just see how nicely cooked it is. See that leg right there? See how it's starting to come apart? Look at that, and you can see the muscle structure. So again, these rabbits have really powerful hind legs, and that's due to these long white muscles here. Looks great. Take a nice piece of that leg over to our plate. Set that down right in the center. There we go. And I'll just get a little bit of the braising liquid. This is where all our goodness is down here. We've got the honey, we've got the beer. Oh, it's incredible. Like, we didn't use too hoppy a beer, so it just has that nice light flavor. Just wonderful. Now, one more spoon just to put a drizzle of that over our plate. There we are. Finish it with just a little garnish of thyme to tie the whole dish together. Et voila. Local honey and beer braised rabbit with a white bean cassoulet. Fantastic. Now that our dish is ready to eat, let's see what kind of beverage we can pair with this. With me today is Kate McDonald from Clive's Classic Lounge. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Garrett, how's it going?
Hey, great.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so what have you got to pair with our rabbit today?
All right, so today I thought you have beer in this dish. You can have these sort of nice meaty flavors. So I instantly think bourbon. We got to go with bourbon.
Of course,
right?
right? Bourbon and Maker's Mark, one of my favorites.
Exactly. And I went with Maker's 46 on this one, just so that we can see a different expression of the bourbon.
Fair enough.
So with the mint, I always like to use fresh. I always say your drink is only as good as its parts.
There you go. Fresh is best, right?
Exactly. Give it a little slap.
Slapping your mint, hey? Was it bad, or did you do something wrong here?
Yes. So the reason we do that is because sometimes when we're muddling, we can end up over muddling, and you end up with those grassy notes that aren't always very pleasant.
Yeah, here you just want the freshness of that mint, hey?
Exactly,
Perfect,
exactly, where it still smells sweet. So this is agave nectar.
So we're adding some sweetness here. Does it add a different flavor note as well, or is it just sweetness?
Well, agave is great because I always see it as we can add just plain sugar, but sugar has no flavor. So we can add sweetness and a bit of a flavor that's going to tie in well. So another substitute that you could use for that would be honey.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I happen to know where to find some good honey at the hotel, so let me know if you need some.
We have it on the roof. We are so spoiled, I've got to
great,
say.
isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm going to chill this down first. So remember that alcohol is really hot, so we also want to add a little bit of dilution.
The water, ease it off a little bit so it doesn't burn when we drink it.
Exactly, exactly.
Perfect.
My dad still takes a bottle of gin out of the fridge and just pours it in a glass, and that's his martini. And I've been trying and trying to tell him the dilution will actually make it taste better.
There you go.
And then we're just
easier
going
to swallow.
Yeah, we're going to top this with some ginger beer.
Very nice. Add a little spice and some bubbles.
Exactly. And this ginger beer is great because it's super spicy.
Very cool.
Perfect. And now to tie in with the fennel, I have a little bit of absinthe.
Oh, perfect. So all that fennel in with the cassoulet is going to come together with this,
Exactly.
Right?
And instead of putting it in the drink, because this is such a potent ingredient, I'm actually just going to mist the glass.
Misting the glass, eh?
Misting the glass.
I tell you, mixologists are taking things to new levels these days, aren't they?
I know, I know.
Well, should we dig in, give it a try?
Yeah.
What are we going to do first? How about you eat and I'll drink?
Okay, sounds good.
Give this a whirl.
Oh, I've got to go and get some of that chorizo in there.
Wow, that's amazing. You're absolutely right. It does soften the alcohol flavor. Like, it doesn't burn at all when it goes down like bourbon normally does. And you get a little hint of that anise flavor.
That is fantastic. I can't
Excellent
wait to see
pairing,
how
Kate.
it goes. Thanks.
You got to try some of that rabbit too. Thank you so much for being here, Kate.
Of course.
Check out our website where you'll find more information on today's show and maybe a few surprises. I'm Garret Schack. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to savor the flavor.
Okay,
Yeah,
I know I can't help myself. I'm just right in there.
Oh, for sure.